here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat, bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
There's so many seeds that are sprouting in my mind right now. But what I want to come back to was, you're speaking to these 9 lives and you're referencing like these lives that we're living in this lifetime. But then I also wonder that if this extends even beyond our life and goes into intergenerational, I think you were alluding to that a moment ago, these past generations, these legacy burdens and patterns, behavioral responses that we're carrying that weren't ours, but we're carrying them.
Yeah, I like that you're double clicking on that. So let me drop into that for a second. Okay. So before I decided to write this book, I did a survey of the women who are Rosebud's customers, and hundreds of women responded. And one of the questions was, where do you go to talk about your sexual or reproductive life? Your mother, your friends, your partner, your kids, your doctor, where? No matter what generation the woman responding was from, the hardest person to talk to was her mother.
Oof.
Like on a scale of 1 to 5, the average was 1.6 in difficult, like if one is the worst in talking to the mother was the score. And if you were in boomer 2, an older generation, it was 1.2. So if the culture of womanhood is passed through the mother and you can't have open conversations because your bodies are, perceived as unappealing or dirty or whatever, or your own sexual desire has never been approved of, then where do you go? So one of the things that I'm doing in the book is really at the end of every chapter, there's a section that says empathizing with women in this stage. And it's not in the book, but I have a list of 100 questions you can ask your mother about her sex life or her reproductive life. I could never ask my mother that. That's like some of the things that people initially say. I said, just try a softball one and see where it goes. Like ask her to tell you about her first period or the details of the birth or like the best sex she's ever had. And like you start to open it up so that it becomes less taboo. So that's one way of decolonizing the immediate family stories. But then you look at how we're all sitting in these cultures where even when I went to name Rosebud initially, I think you and I talked about this, like we were looking for names of that were euphemisms for the yoni, for the women, for a women's genitals, that and all we found were slurs. Like you don't even realize how much the body's been demonized or made dirty, or like the whole story of Eve, that women are the fall of man, like how this all lives in the system. And so because there's been those kind of narratives, number one, and then the second one, like economic and power realities, where you did not for thousands of years have direct observable power in the economy or to vote, women have developed a lot of sideways kind of toxic ways to get power. And so we look at, okay, my own family, what messages did I get? My culture at large, what messages did I get? What adaptations have we been taught to get power? And then how do I slowly, and with great compassion toward myself, start to unwind them? And I think that is vital to well, not just changing your own experience of being alive, but to changing the culture for all of your sisters of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
You can reverse heal, like in the tradition that I grew up in or came up in. um the ideas was that like you as a parent are responsible for healing that passes on to your children, but the reality is if my child does a piece of work, that it heals backward in the ancestral line. I can feel my grandmother being like a resolution and a rewriting of the story with my grandmother every time I do a piece of work. It's not one directional. So is that long answer to your question?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Given what the cultural climate looks like right now, do you think there's particular generational patterns that we're in a unique position here today to heal? I mean, we're talking about sexuality primarily, but I wonder, what are you viewing?
Well, I do you feel in your circles the different narratives around motherhood that are emergent?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. Yes.
So let's like hit just on statistical stuff for a minute. That If you look in the 1960s, the average woman in America had 4 kids, 3.9 children, and she had them beginning around 22. Now, the average woman has less than 2 children, usually closer to one, and the age of first birth is around 29. All throughout human history, 1 in 5 women would end their reproductive years without having a child, generally due to infertility, spinsterism, probably lesbianism that was sort of unspoken to, but they were like the aunties, which have a role in society. And now 1 in 3 women in Tokyo, and if you ask people under 50 today, only 1 in 2 want to have a physical child, a biological child. So if the whole story of the urgency, the centrality of becoming a mother is changing, this is the first generation we're really seeing that in. And I feel that's got so many layers. It's economic layers. In the book, I also talk about the Gaian response to overpopulation, that you might think you're making that decision yourself, but it's more of a collective response to the resource constraints of the planet. But if we really talk about what's changing there, and you see the writing on the wall that it's changing, then the political response that we're seeing is like, make women have more babies. Use a media campaign to like make pregnancy and motherhood appealing again, trad wives, all of that stuff, make it idyllic, when in fact the structural changes that are needed to really make motherhood an attractive thing are not there. So I'm very curious about what it means for a woman to say, I will give my gifts to the world, not through my womb, but through my body in other ways, through my creative efforts, through my care of the planet. And together we'll focus on raising generations that have more adult support, where the ratio's shifted. I think that's a very big meta change. So imagine before, 2 adults in a family for 4 children. Now you've got 2 adults in a family for 1 child, and the level of care, containment, holding that can happen in a community when now it's 4 to 1 to bring up a conscious, responsible generation. It's kind of exciting.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And then it's not the whole responsibility on, I think parents hold so much, or my clients' parents, they hold this fear that they're going to mess their kid up, or they're going to do something wrong, or they're not available because they have to work, 50 hours a week, and they just can't be there as much as they believe their child needs. And that's true. So this community model, spreads the division of that responsibility, puts more models in front of them of what to do, and shares resources.
Yeah, I love that. I would also just say, love them as best as you can. They have their own dharma, trust life as them. Like, we had a lot less attentiveness when we were growing up. The kids were left to their own devices most of the time. There was something called latchkey kids. Do you remember that?
Yep, I do.
So, just we didn't have structured programs. Our natural innate capacity to learn, as long as you're not numbing out with food and television and gaming and stuff like that, as long as you're just being exposed to places where you're encountering physical embodied reality, doing stuff, being out in nature, creative play, then I think they're fine.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.